this is like the fourth time I've recorded this today. I might be going slightly mad. Sketchmate this. Hey everybody, X-Sketch back with more Tier in the X-Files, and we are continuing our journey through Season 5, starting off with Episode 11, Kill Switch, brought to us by William Gibson and Tom Maddox, and directed by Rob Bowman. And let's be honest, if ever there's an episode that you want directed by Rob Bowman, it's this one. Just the action, the energy, the special effects, everything that's happening here is about as has got his stamp all over it. Which seems appropriate because even though Chinga had elements that made it feel like Stephen King was involved in some way in the writing, this feels out and out a Gibsonian kind of episode. It's just got that paranoia and, fear of technology taking over that is rife in his stories. It is funny that in the behind the scenes featurettes, Rob Bowman is just like, you know what, when you write a book, you can write whatever massive action scenes and that you want. But when you're on a budget on network television, it kind of doesn't work the same way. So I would be interested to know what might have been cut. But for what they did here, it's insane. Just the level of practical and digital effects, this AI that's gone rogue, that's trying to stop its creators from killing it with a kill switch, by kind of playing with them a bit. I didn't feel it was fair with Invisigoth, who didn't really seem all that interested in killing it. But it's out to kill her just the same. But these scenes of it controlling this governmental satellite with and using missiles to try and take them out, it's just really, really fun. And like I say, for what they were able to do on a budget, I think they should be applauded. That's just something, though. Again, it's something we've not really touched on in these rewatch reviews. But the special effects that, Matt Beck and David Gautier and the rest of the crew did are just mind-blowing for their time. They don't always work. And we've mentioned that, but yeah, I definitely feel more needs to be applauded than necessarily picked on for a show that was on in the 90s and didn't have all of the backing from 20th Century Fox. But we follow this trio, so there's this trio of these tech nerds that have created this AI, like I say, that's gone rogue, and we start out the episode with Donald Gelman, who's one of them, who has developed a kill switch to kill off the AI, and it decides to kill him off first. So it congregates all these different gangs in this diner where Gelman is, and then he gets killed in the crossfire, and we then get Mulder and Scully turn up, and randomly, and this is something that Gibson and Maddox bring up again in their season 7 episode First Person Shooter, they portray Mulder as this person who quite randomly apparently knows all the legends in the tech world, because Mulder's like, yes, Gelman was a known folk legend in Silicon Valley, and you're like, how do you know this? This is the man that doesn't even know how to use a smartphone in season 10. Him and technology have just never clicked. So the idea, yes, he might have heard some names from the gunmen, I guess. The gunmen who are exceptionally underutilized in this episode to a frustrating point. I don't know how the main contact for technological geekdom are so absent from this episode. They turn up in one scene where then one of the other trio in Visigoth, Esther Nairn, gets brought in because Mulder and Scully suspects that she's involved somehow. And they take her back to the gunman's lair, and they're all lusting her, look, sexy tech babe. And and she has one scene with them which is quite antagonistic while they're being real. Even Byers is being really let me straighten my tie, hot babe. So glad he forgot about Suzanne Modesky quite quickly. um he they have one scene like that, and then at the end when Esther, because it turns out they were working to upload their souls to the internet, which is in 1998 was the grossest idea, and in modern world is just even more awful and disturbing. Uh, but they at the end she uploads, and we see this screen "Bite Me" written across Frohicke's computer, and you're like, okay, was there a scene I missed? I feel like they needed more interactions for that to mean something. That would be my biggest gripe. But yeah, the gunmen are just there for that bit. And then the rest of it is because Invisigoth is brilliantly played by Kristen Lemon, I think it is. However, and she and Gillian Anderson have this great kind of butting heads kind of buddy cop adventure while Mulder is off investigating some other avenues. Scully gets kind of taken hostage by Esther to go find David, only to then find out that David's home has been blown up by a satellite missile. And Scully is all very, ready to shoot on sight if once she gets access to her gun. But then you see that sympathy she feels when Esther just breaks down. There is a lot of technobabble here that Esther just spouts. Oh, we wanted to upload the modem at this speed and this bit rate and all these key words that make it sound as techy as possible. And yes, it's true to Gibson and Maddox's writing, but it does come off a bit too sorry, sore throat at the moment. It does come off a bit too expositional and unnecessary and really stilted. It's not, like I say, Lerman does a great job here. I really enjoy her as this character who you don't really feel you should have much reason to like. But the lines that she says with the technobabble are insanely stunted and a bit awkward and uncomfortably placed, just to make her sound smarter than she is. But so you've got all that, you've got that great chemistry there, and meanwhile you've got Mulder, who has then somehow been captured by the AI that's using these bots, remote control bots kind of thing, and he gets inserted into a virtual reality where he believes his arms have been burnt and then possibly amputated, while the AI is trying to find out the information from him about where the kill switch is. And it really plays into this, to Mulder's porn addiction, which we've not had a reference to for quite some time, actually, not since the early days of the series. So it's a great callback to then see, like, these bimbo busty nurses giving him special rubs, massages in kind of suggestive ways under the blanket, while above his head is this lit crucifix. The cross imagery, from the surgical lamp to then this crucifix that's brightly lit, to then having Scully coming in to save him, and the fact that the AI can read from his psyche that he believes Scully is going to save him. is just amazing. But then it turns out that, this virtual version of her is just there again to get this information out of him because it's been led to believe that he, would tell Scully anything kind of thing. I just love that detail, and the fact that Scully saves him in the end as well just says it all. To be honest, I think this is a really enjoyable episode. I really struggle. I've been thinking of this in the S rank, but it's not necessarily one I automatically go to, and I don't know when I can click on it. I kind of want to put it in S because I actually genuinely, especially on this rewatch, I always enjoy it when I watch it, but on this rewatch, I really enjoyed it. Even when I was going through to then take screen captures for the little inserts that I do on these videos. I would normally, if you'd ask me normally, I would put it in A. But I'm going to put it in S. Because I genuinely enjoy it, and I think there's a lot here to enjoy. It does get up its own butt sometimes. But we go from a questionably S rank episode to a definitely unquestionable. Before we even talk about it, we gotta put it up there. Come on, Bad Blood, S rank, or Bad Blood, Bad Blood, Bad Blood, Bad Blood, as Gillian Anderson would say. And I can't say it fast, so brought to us by Vince Gilligan. Like I say, without question, this is an S rank for numerous reasons. Not only the writing, also the direction from Cliff Bowl, who I think I've mentioned before, is one of those directors that we don't really acknowledge enough for the work that he did on this series. But he always did good work. And but also the acting. David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson, I don't praise enough for their acting on this series. I think it's some of the best they've ever done in anything. Especially David Duchovny, I definitely don't praise much. But here, much like in Small Potatoes, both he and Anderson just really, because this is a classic he said, she said story of how this investigation in Texas went, investigating possible vampires. And of course, you've got Mulder's interpretation of things, and you've got Scully's interpretation of things. And they're having to explain this because there's a possible lawsuit after Mulder staked somebody who was possibly not really a vampire. And to see the way that they tell their side of the story, and then Duchovny and Anderson act out both versions of themselves in each other's stories. It is so well done. And what I think is fascinating and a great character study is not only how each character sees the other one. Be that Scully seeing Mulder as this over hyperactive puppy who's constantly looking for the next truth that's out there somewhere. And Mulder seeing Scully as this constantly moaning, skeptical, naysayer, bratty sister kind of thing. That he still needs around him to be able to survive. Not only that, but it's also how they see themselves. Like, Mulder sees himself as this well-meaning, but really bumbling idiot kind of thing. Scully sees herself as this, thoughtful, very, very logical person who is just constantly fed up and grumpy and tired. And you're like, and constantly belittling Mulder on some level. And you're like, okay. I just think it's, again, fictional characters, but you can't help but wonder if Gilligan took a lot of inspiration from traits and tropes that had been creeping up on, the online forums, and of course fan fiction. Because it's very easy to forget, especially now with online communities and stuff. But The X-Files was one of the first series to really have real-time reactions from the fans. Back in the day, you had to wait for the fanzines and stuff like that. But now we had instant message boards. People could watch the series and then immediately straight after just go on and post their comments. And so much, for better or worse, admittedly, really shaped, not necessarily intentionally all the time, but I think it, because, some of the writers definitely paid it, and Gilligan has admitted he definitely went on the message boards and stuff. So I think, and I feel like this was the case in Detour. I did mention it on my original recording of that video, but then forgot to mention it when I had to re-record it due to technical issues. You can't help but wonder if he took some inspiration, because the fact that even then, in Scully's retelling of the story, Mulder does this whole putting his hands on her shoulders. I was like, I don't know. And she turns to Sheriff Hartwell, who she's totally hot for, by the way. And I don't blame her. Luke Wilson is hot, especially in this episode, as the sheriff. But she turns to him, and he's just like, he does that. As if she's constantly needing to make excuses for Mulder's behaviour. And it's funny because it makes me reminiscent of Detour, where Mulder just grabs Scully's arms and is like, see that? And I, like I said, didn't mention it at the time, our communication skills, they're like that. They're silent. And which plays into a trope on fan fiction about the silent communication that they have. So the fact that we're seeing the show become a lot more self-aware. It's fun. It's fun in an episode like this, where it's a funny episode. I don't think it works so well in, obviously, the serious episodes. But to have an episode like this that's lighthearted, it's just a fun character study. And like I say, to then see them, to have them investigating this vampire story, which then really flips these characters, flips a lot of the standard, because obviously vampires, we saw it in Free, but obviously the show has always tried to base itself in reality. So you're then seeing that these aren't your movie type vampires. They're just these like country bumpkins that are going around and trying to keep themselves to themselves and just live their lives and not interrupt with other people. But Ronnie Strickland is off watching all these movies and thinking, this is how I need to act. And it's like, no, and they're all trying to clean up after him and stuff like that. It's just, there's a lot of subversive silliness that takes a lot of tropes from vampires and stuff like that, and especially because this happened obviously before Twilight was a thing, before vampires just really got overused in popular culture and ruined. My biggest issue with this episode is easily the random bit where a crew member's hand creeps in, and of Mulder's breaking up this stool with his foot, kicking it in, and then this crew member's hand, quite clearly, not even missable, clearly comes in and puts down this like hero steak, this perfectly formed steak. And David Duchovny then just grabs it as soon as it gets put down. And you're just like, I don't know if it's supposed to be on purpose. I'm pretty sure it's not. But honestly, once you see it for the first time, you can't help but spotting it over and over again. It's just an excellent episode, highly entertaining. Would I say it's my favourite of all time? No. I would definitely probably put it in my top 10. I don't know. Maybe I should do a top 10, 15, top 15 list, if anybody's interested. Uh, my favourite episodes of all time. Let me know down in the comments. Uh, please comment. But yeah, I can understand why people would put this as their favourite. I think it takes a lot of that darkness of the show, but weaves in different elements that the show was always good at doing. So yeah, I highly entertaining. Definitely recommend. But as usual, we go from like a silly episode to the more serious episodes. Patient X. Strap in. Get your drinks ready. Hang on, I need a drink. And I say strap in because this is mythology. And not only is this mythology that goes all in hard. Like, we are talking, you do not see Mulder for nearly 10 minutes in this episode. You don't see the titular character, Patient X, who turns out to be Cassandra Spender, ex-wife of Smoking Man and mother to new addition to the series, Jeffrey Spender, played by Chris Owens. You do not meet her until nearly 10 minutes into the episode. Because we have so much front-ended with Alex Krycek investigating this scene where previous abductees have been called to then be set ablaze by rebel alien forces that have mutilated their faces to stop themselves from being infected by the black oil. This is all in the first 5 minutes. And then you're seeing the Syndicate who are completely confused by what's going on. And this is all going on as you're putting these pieces in place. And you don't see Mulder for that long. You do not see Scully, who is actually a lot more integral to this story than you would believe. She doesn't turn up until halfway through the episode. Not even kidding. It's insane to think. I think it's genius, and I think it works really well in this episode. But I think it's a big risk, and I think it's fascinating that they did it. To just go, look, you know what, if you're not into your myth arc, get out now, because we are going in all the way in setup for Fight the Future. Because this is our first, this is our black oil story of the season. It's our first one since, Tunguska and Terma. Which is even more interesting because it's the first time we've seen Krycek back. It's the first time we've seen Covarrubias back since those episodes. So to see them all come back and all be involved and see Marita working with the Syndicate and Krycek, who now has this militia that are following his every order as he captures this witness to this scene of mass immolation. And then he's trying to find out the facts. So then he infects the boy with black oil so that if the Syndicate go after him, he's just going to risk infecting them and stuff like that. It's genius. And so to see, because as well, you got to bear in mind, so Smoking Man was believed to be dead at the end of Redux 2. And, we know he's not dead. One, because it's Smoking Man. But two, at the end of the Red and the Black, we find out that actually he has been alive the whole time. And he's been in this little cabin in Canada where he's been using his typewriter, not to write stories this time, but to write longing letters to his estranged son, Jeffrey. who conveniently also works at the Washington, D.C. Federal Bureau building. The same place as Mulder. But yeah, we find out he's alive. But meanwhile, the Syndicate don't know. And watching this vacuum, this power vacuum that then well-manicured man and first elder are trying to fill to then try and control the Syndicate and what's going on, and them arguing about what they're going to do to deal with Krychek, to deal with this situation. They thread in the whole bit about how but the colonists aren't supposed to start until from 15 years from now, which then gives us our 2012 date kind of thing. To watch them all vying for power and stuff like that. And John Neville, who plays the manicured man, and Don S. Williams, who plays First Elder, they have this amazing combative chemistry where they just constantly seem to be eyeing each other up and like stalking around like lions, like who's gonna get the meat first. You're just waiting for them to just go, not fisticuffs, but maybe, I don't know, gloves slapped across the face. Good sir, how dare you? They just have amazing, and their scenes are excellent. It's just sad that so many of these intriguing scenes are all for naught by the time we get to, After Fight the Future. But it's so interesting to watch them, and then to watch Cassandra Spender, who is trying to convince Mulder that things are not right, and he has to be the one who steps up to save them, because there's a war going on between the alien races, and Mulder, meanwhile, is just like, yeah, whatever, you're crazy, because Dr. Verba turns back up. The man who hypnotized Mulder to find out, who apparently has no concept of doctor-patient confidentiality, when he quite happily apparently tells Cassandra Mulder's story about being hypnotized and about how he discovered his sister was abducted by aliens from this regression regression session and stuff like that. And you're just like, dude, because she just goes, oh yeah, no, the doctor told me all about your sessions. It's like, hello? And then Mulder at no point just goes, excuse me. I'd be like, excuse me, sir, what the fuck? But you have Mulder just like, check yourself out, ignore, just get on with your life. And Cassandra, who brilliantly played by Veronica Cartwright, excellent as usual. I've always said this show has amazing casting choices, and Veronica Cartwright is definitely an amazing choice here. I'm so sad that Cassandra was kind of done dirty in the follow-up episodes, One Son, Two Fathers, One Son in season 6, but that's a whole other rant for next season. So look forward to that. Yeah, it's it frustrates me in a way, because I get how Mulder can get to this point where he's all like, the government is against us, and let's be honest, we've seen enough. And even Cassandra at one point says, oh, I don't doubt the government's involved, but and I get where he's coming from, the fact that he's kind of been broken by this knowledge that Scully was given cancer to make him believe. I get how that could break him, but at the same time, and I said this before, I really struggled to figure out how just one man, just Michael Krishkow, was able to say enough. And I guess, like I say, I guess maybe it was just Scully going, he told me they gave me this cancer to make you believe. Maybe that's all it took. But the fact that after years of ridicule and completely ignoring everybody's, scientific, logical explanations, it just takes Krishkow giving him this exposition dump to then go, yeah, you're all crazy. And it frustrates me then So Scully, she gets called. She's insisting to Mulder maybe he should listen to Cassandra and stuff. When she starts to sense this, the chip, the calling to this site, I am frustrated that she didn't get called back to Skyland Mountain. That they were just like, oh, there was this gathering at Skyland Mountain, but Scully wasn't called there. That frustrates me. That feels like an missed opportunity. Doing this whole, oh Mulder, don't you get it? We're at Skyland Mountain. I was taken at Skyland Mountain. It's like, okay, but you don't get taken there again. The dam has no connection to her, and I know it's because she has a different chip in her now. But I just feel like it was a missed opportunity. But she's trying to convince Mulder, and then at the end of this episode, we believe she's about to get burnt by these rebel forces. And you're like, what the hell? To be continued has never been scarier, seriously. Because you're like, no, she can't die. But you watch that end of that episode and you're like, how? How is she going to get out of this? And then the following episode, The Red and the Black, which is a great follow-up. And I think actually, because the last episode, Patient X, I believe, is directed by Kim Manners. I could be wrong. But The Red and the Black is directed by Chris Carter. Both are written by Carter and Spotnitz. And you can feel a lot of Carter's inputs here. But I think they're very well directed and stuff like that. There's some amazing chemistry between all the characters. And there's a lot going on. But Scully's going, this is what happened to me. And then they have this amazing regression session where she goes in, and I call it amazing because just the image of her reaching out for Mulder. She's completely unaware of her surroundings. She doesn't know. She's in this zone of recounting what's happened. And she reaches out for Mulder and she just grabs his hand. And that's her lifeline. That's everything. And that means so much. And she doesn't even realise. And it just helps her so much. And it's effing beautiful, honestly. But Mulder hears her. He sees the impact on her. And yet he goes away, and in a scene afterwards, in a cut scene even, he's just like, well, you're wrong, Scully. You've just had these memories implanted into you. And Scully's like, are you kidding me? This is coming from me. Why would I come up with this story? How would I come up with this story? And he's just like, oh, because you've been around me too long and stuff like that. And it's just like, seriously. Like, she's laying in the hospital bed. Before she has the regression, she's saying, and she tells him, I followed you on nothing more than your belief that the truth was out there. But now you're asking me to follow you with this new belief when I don't have these memories. And you're telling me what my memories are when I don't even have those memories. And you can see her genuine frustration. And at times, and I think Duchovny plays it well, at times you can see him fighting it. Like, desperate to try. Like, everything inside him wants to believe. But at the same time, he's just been broken too many times, kind of thing. I don't know. I think because the Mulder, skeptical Mulder storyline just was not developed enough. Like, we had that happen in Redux. We had a passing reference to it in Postmodern Prometheus. But here it's just all in. And you're just like, it just feels like he's been a dick at this point. I just think it's interesting. There's so much going on. There's so many pieces going on. Because you've got to bear in mind as well that originally Chris Carter just wanted 5 seasons and then to spin off into movies with the show. So much in this season is being wrapped up And yes, you could say it's because they're building up to the movie, but like I say, I don't feel like much here. Yes, you're getting your pawns put in place with seeing the stuff going on between Manicured Man and First Elder and stuff, and a lot of that syndicate stuff. But once Smoking Man comes back in the end, it just feels very back to the status quo. But it's just there. I have issues with the idea of it spinning off to movies that I do not think would have worked, and I think we'll talk more about that when we get to I Want to Believe later on. But unfortunately, as much as Carter wanted that to be the plan, Fox were like, no, 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 no. We want more money, please. More money. We won't pay you more money, but we want your money, please. So they were like, well, we'll give you Fight the Future, but keep making seasons. So, yeah. So, but as a result, a lot of stuff is being tied up. And of course, then, you know, you have the introduction of Jeffrey Spender, and there were concerns that he was going to replace Mulder should Duchovny not renew his contract. I don't believe that was ever going to be a real thing. I can understand because it feels like they're wrapping up the stories of these characters. It feels like there could have been like a next generation situation, you know, after Fight the Future. But there's no way Spender could have just... And it's not Chris Owens' fault or anything. Just Spender as a character is just too annoying and unlikable to be a lead. So there's no way. But I think seeing these characters being introduced, seeing their interactions with existing characters, seeing all the pieces being moved around, there is so much intrigue, and I can understand. This is not an episode. This is not a two-parter to introduce newbies to. Like, at all. This is... You need so much... Even though you can watch it and it just exists, so much feeds into, like, the history of the series. So much feeds into this two-parter. That it just, if you would be completely clueless if you went into this having not seen anything else. But easily, easily, and it surprises me actually, because there was recently a question on Twitter, you know, just to age this video, yes, back when it was Twitter, there was a post on one of the X-Files pages where they were like, what's your favourite type of episode? Monster of the Week or Myth Arc? And I replied and said, without question, and it was a consensus that I kind of saw in some of the other replies, is up to Fight the Future, easily Myth Arc for character development and story possibilities and stuff like that. After Fight the Future, it's just all Monster of the Week are the only thing that the show had going for it, kind of thing. And I really feel like this two-parter is just the pinnacle of the Myth Arc. You know, just the telling of the black oil, you know, this is the last real outing, proper outing for the Vancouver virus, as I like to call it. You'll have to forgive me. I've recorded this video like 4 times now. So if I'm repeating myself, I apologize, because I've lost track of what I've said in which version of this video. But easily, I would have to, and you wouldn't think normally I would do this, although I've pretty much done that for all of this season's mythological episodes. I gotta put this up in S. Both of them. Because there is just so much intriguing storytelling going on here. Oh my God. That it's highly entertaining. And I think as a two-parter, it's just fun to watch on its own anyway. Like when you put on the VHSs and stuff like that. The Patient X. I used to watch that a lot, over and over again, because it's just interesting, and watching even Krychek's motivations, with Mulder and stuff like that, and the fact that so much ties into the Tunguska storyline, to have even the Doctor and his sidekick from the Tunguska gulag, going along and being, but we do the tests on prisoners and criminals. We don't do it on innocent people. What is Krychek doing? It's so fun to watch the stretch, reach of these characters in impact on the storyline. It's just a lot of fun, as a long-time fan. But we go from that to a screeching halt with Travelers. Okay, so I will admit, so from the very first time I ever saw this episode until season 10, and Babylon in 2016, Travelers, if you would ever ask me what the worst episode was, Travelers would easily be my answer to that question, hands down. Now, like I say, until Babylon came, and then Babylon came along and took away that rusty crown. But I don't like this episode. I really don't. It's set, so we have like 1990, 1991, Mulder, still wearing a wedding ring. They decided to double down on that one, and smoking. Discovering the X-Files for the first time. Finding out that his name was uttered by some wanted serial killer. And he tracks down the detective that worked this case back in the 40s or 50s, and who turns out to be Arthur Dales, who is brilliantly played. This is just genius casting here. Played by Darren, well, the older version, played by Darren McGavin. And for those who don't understand the reference there, Darren McGavin played Kolchak, the Night Stalker. And that series and movies were a massive influence for Chris Carter with this series. So there's something full circle bringing him into this universe. And he tells Mulder about this case, and recounts the investigation back in the 40s, 50s, during the time of the Red Scare and the hunt for communists in America, and just the paranoia and fear that was involved. While this guy, Skur, I want to say Edward Skur, but I don't think it's that. He was, came out of the army and was experimented on by his government, and had something implanted into him. Now, this is very much this is written by Frank Spotnitz and John Scheiben, and it very much feels like a story that they then developed further with Vince Gilligan for season 9's Jump the Shark. There's a lot of similarities here. But the thing is we follow younger Dales is played by Frederick Lane. And I love the fact that, Lane plays the kind of curious, optimistic, ex-army vet, and he, this optimistic kind of person, whereas McGavin plays the old, cynical, experienced too much, seen too much, done too much, been rocked by the world and stuff like that too much. version. They both play their versions of the same character really well, and yet they feel connected. They don't feel like two different people. So I have to applaud that. But we have a Mulder and Scully I mean, Scully's not here at all, and Mulder is barely here. As he sits and smokes his way through these discussion scenes. In a Mulder and Scully like episode previously, we've had the connection of Skinner, or then say this season with the lone gunman, and we'll see it again next season with the lone gunman, taking up an episode. Um, but here we're introduced this new character, and we're supposed to follow him, and you know learn about him and have character development with somebody that we've never met before. And as a result, he feels very one note, very flat, just very, I'm the good cop. You'll follow me, right? I'm just trying to find the truth. And you're just like, okay, do you have any other personality traits? And yeah, it just falls flat as a result. I love all the period kind of costume and all the smoky rooms, the police station and that are just all smoky because, of course, smoking allowed in everywhere. And just then you've even got Dean Aylesworth returning as young Bill Mulder. He appeared in Demons, so it's nice to have that continuity there. He's never seen again. Young Bill Mulder. Bill Mulder turns up in Two Fathers, One Son. But again, we'll get to that next season. But we never see young Bill Mulder again. So, I guess it means for naught. But up to this point, young Bill Mulder has been played by rotating different random Vancouver kind of castmates. So it's nice to have some kind of continuity there. But even then, so it turns out that Sker knew Bill, and Bill Mulder helped Sker. So that's why when he dies, he utters Mulder's name, and Mulder's like, oh. And we're supposed to then see how Bill Mulder tried to help out the victims of what his buddies were doing and stuff like that. And he's trying to whistleblow and stuff, and you're like, okay, but he just let a murderer go free. Okay? It's not the guy's fault, but he still can't control what he's doing. That's not his fault. I don't know. It feels... this episode frustrates me, and it bores me, quite frankly. I just sit there, and I'm just like, okay. And yeah, I just bores me. And it's not that it's bad. I don't think it was a gamble that really worked. The insect thing coming out of the mouth is gross and horrifying. But the scenes go on a little too long with it, and you're just like, okay, just kill the guy already, please. But two, it's just, I don't know. I just feel like it plods plot-wise. It is fun to learn the origins of why the X-Files is called the X-Files. Within the universe. That this secretary was filing unsolved cases under U until she ran out of space. So she just put them in X because there was plenty of room there. And that's how they were named. And you're like, oh. But now Mulder has, tons of filing cabinets with X. Just make extra U filing cabinets. But no, I think there's some interesting seeds here, and like I say, it's fun to see McGavin return in Aguamala as Dales. Fred Lane return as a young Dales, um, in The Unnatural. In fact, unfortunately, and we'll talk about this when we talk about season 6. Unfortunately, McGavin was too sick to complete filming on that episode. But I think there's a lot of elements here that just could have worked, that should have worked, that for me personally just do not. I would love to hear from people that like this episode, and what you take away from it. Because me personally, it's easily a D. It just is. I just get nothing from it. And yeah, I mean, I always like to hear comments, but yeah, I'd be fascinated what other people's thoughts are. And unfortunately, though, we go from one mediocre episode to Mind's Eye. Another episode from Tim Minear, and another episode that just doesn't do it for me. You have this story of this blind woman, Marty Glenn, who manages to have sight through flashes. She sees things sporadically through this man who turns out to be her father and the man who killed her mother. And she goes around, he's going around killing people. Apparently it's not bad enough that he just kills people. Apparently he also has to be connected to the mob and conning people or whatever. You're like, okay, I mean, it's bad enough that he's killing people. But then Marty's going around using her abilities to go to these crime scenes and try to messily clean up after him. And it does not help that Marty is one of those annoying, from a disabled person's point of view, rather insulting kind of stereotype of a disabled person that is either, either in pop culture, you're either got the, oh, pity me, I'm in pain, I'm missing a limb, I'm this, that, and the other, or don't you dare talk about my disability, I'm absolutely fine, I will bite your face off. And Marty is definitely going to kick you in the balls if you dare to even remotely infer that she is vulnerable in any possible way. She has the biggest chip on her shoulder about her disability, about her blindness, and I'm just like, oh no. And unfortunately, as somebody who grew up as a visually impaired person that people didn't understand, that was severely bullied, to then watch, and this isn't exclusive to the X-Files. I would see this on loads of stuff, like soaps and stuff like that. People would lose their sight temporarily and then become the most bitter, twisted, just constant, oh, my life is over because I have lost my sight. Don't talk to me, I'm not worth your time. It's just insulting. And I get this is a product of its time. I think we have kind of evolved with that kind of representation, but at the same time, not. And it's frustrating because guest star Lily Taylor plays the part really well. Like, she's convincing as the blind person. At no point did I feel like she was blinking a lot or maybe making too much eye contact or anything like that. She genuinely was convincing. I didn't know her at the time, and I was like, oh wait, is she actually visually impaired or anything? And it's like, no, she's just really good at acting it. And I think I don't necessarily think she should have won, but I'm definitely pleased that she got a nomination for Outstanding Guest Spot at the Emmys for this role. Because she is easily the shining part of this episode. But it's just unfortunate that she's playing that stereotype. Who then... and I think everybody is just over the top. So you've got her, who is super defensive, and I just don't get her motivations for going and cleaning up the crime scenes. She could just... I don't know. You can see her trying to stop the crime, but then it makes no sense that she just doesn't let him get caught. Other than, I guess the idea is that she was living through prison when he was in prison. And I think we see that when then she ends up in in juvenile and stuff like that. So you've got her who's that extreme. And then you've got Mulder who's doing his caddish thing where he is being super... I'm sympathetic for you. I don't believe you're guilty. You can say you're guilty, but I don't believe you're guilty. You're a blind woman, and your strength is your disability is your strength, and I'm here to support you, and touchy-feely and really condescending. It is... I know he got a lot of praise for his acting, but honestly, just the lines come off, and we've seen before that Mulder has always seen that, like, he kind of admires people with any kind of deformity or disability and stuff. But yeah, it does come across as a little condescending. So you have her like that, him like that, and then the detective in charge, who's played by the same actor who played the evil guy in Ghost in the Machine. You have him who is super. She's guilty, and I'm gonna get her. I'm gonna catch her. I'm gonna find out what happened, and she's guilty. They're all so over the top. It's insane. It's like this trilogy of extremes that makes you just go, what? But you're probably wondering, okay, so if they're like that, and I say trio, what about Scully? What about Scully? She's in this episode, but God knows why. She does nothing here. She serves absolutely no purpose. She just stands around with her arms folded, scowling the whole time, just going, well, you may be right, Mulder, but I don't know how you're going to prove she's not guilty. And you're just like, okay. And then when they have the one person come in to maybe do a medical thing to check that Marty is even actually blind, apparently Scully actually has an area where she has no expertise. They actually have to get an ophthalmologist in to check her and run the tests. It's not Scully running the tests. I just think it's impressive Scully's not running the tests, to be honest, but because God knows she does everything else usually. But she serves no purpose here. Absolutely nothing. So yeah, there's some amazing acting, but I just feel like the writing just fails it. And as a result, it just mediocre. And please, I'm not blind. I don't know what it's like to be blind, and I'm nearly blind, but like I still have light perception in one eye. And I don't smoke. But please, somebody tell me, be it now or back in the 1990s, please tell me blind people really weren't lighting their cigarettes by shoving their face up at a gas stove. Please. Because my God, watching that scene... Now again, Lily Taylor perfectly plays it, because at no point does it feel like she's looking at the flame to gauge her distance and stuff like that. But it gives me anxiety every time I see it. Just, she has this cigarette in her mouth, and then she gets, like, right close to this lit hob to light it. And I'm just like, please don't. please don't. You're stressing me out right now. And I don't know, I kind of get, I guess it's so you can feel the heat, so you can gauge how close you are to it. But all I see is her face just going up in flames. Seriously, it just stresses me out every time. There's got to be a better way. um, but otherwise, and the explanation at the end that Mulder just gives, oh, he's your father, and he killed your mother, and ta-da, that's the explanation. It feels so tacked on. I do like the kind of what Marty does at the end to stop the visions. But at the same time, I don't know, it just feels rushed, like they didn't know how to end it. And just the ability just doesn't feel very well explained. It's not the worst. It's actually, like I say, it's a well acted episode. But I am really struggling, sorry, right now with my eyes. Speaking of episodes, I'm gonna have to put it in C. I don't think it's the worst, by any means. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of it is Kitsunagari level of just frustratingly so much potential that just goes lost. And it's not helped when it is then followed up by All Souls. All Souls, which is somehow a mythological episode, a mythic episode, but a Monster of the Week episode. And we've seen this before, that actually it can work when we have stuff flow over from mythic episodes into standard episodes. I've always said I love that continuity. I wish there had been more of it, and it is a shame that so much of this stuff just gets forgotten from here on out. But this episode deals with Scully's apparently all-consuming grief of losing Emily back in Christmas Carol, Emily two-parter, that apparently has been consuming her since, what, for the last 7-8 episodes. I don't know when this was happening, but apparently it's a thing. And I think, I think it's just more that Father McHugh's to blame, because he turns up again after the Redux 2, Gethsemane three-parter. And I really enjoy seeing Scully return to her faith, to have that pillar of strength in her life. After everything that has happened to her, after the cancer arc, after Emily, I think it's interesting and great character development to see her returning to that. But Father McHugh takes Dana aside at a Sunday Mass, and he's just like, well, you know how you're grieving? Well, there's this other family. They just lost their daughter. So why don't you go chat with them to share your grief? Thanks so much. Scully, who apparently is still walking around carrying a picture of Emily with her, that she stole. Okay, I mean, I guess patient-doctor confidentiality is one thing, but apparently it's absolutely fine at the church, this social communal thing. But then Scully goes along, and we're reminded of this show's absolute contempt towards adoptive parents. If you're not the blood relative, then screw you, apparently. This show constantly feels this need to drive that home. I don't know what it is, but yeah, you have, so this girl, this polydactyl, deformed girl that's suffering with this disease, and that leaves her, unable to move and stuff. She ends up dead, out in the middle of the pouring rain in the street, with her lightning seemingly, struck her eyeballs and stuff, and she's just in rigor mortis in this position, kind of praying on her knees. And the adoptive father is absolutely distraught and confused how God can let this happen and stuff like that, and questioning his faith. The adoptive mother, however, yeah, whatever, genuinely, she's more put off by the notion that her husband is questioning his faith than the fact that this girl was killed. And I'm not saying how anybody should grieve or anything. Everybody grieves differently. But I think it's quite telling in this episode that the adoptive mother doesn't seem to give a shit. And yet Scully, who barely had much to do with Emily, and again, the parents, the adoptive parents of Emily were just swept away quite quickly. Yeah, whatever. It's Scully's child, so screw you. Scully apparently has the most truest of grieving, love for Emily, for this daughter that she knew for all of a month, if that. And you're just like, okay. I don't know. It feels a little unbalanced. But there's a lot of beats here from Revelations. The fact that Scully feels called to protect these girls. Turns out there's 3 of them, I think it is. And she's trying to protect them from all being killed, while Glenn Morshower's demon character, because of course he had to be a demon, he's a ginger. Sorry, I had to make a South Park reference there. Apparently he's this demon who's going around. He wants to kill the girls. But don't worry, guys. Don't worry. Oh, sorry. Don't worry. God's killing them instead. And that's fine. As long as God gets to him before the demon does. What's the issue? I'm sorry, this episode. I don't know if it's like the theological elements here or what, but I'm just like, what? And then you have, they seemingly, like, apparently it's absolutely fine that these poor girls are being hunted down, but because they randomly see, like, because at one point, and I assume it's not lightning that's smiting them. Apparently it might be God's God rays, because at one point there's this bizarre scene that actually got trimmed down quite significantly, and I don't think you're missing much from the longer cut, because I just don't get it. Like, so you have the scene where Scully is in the car park, she drops her keys in the most clumsiest of ways, and then looks up to see this strange man who's just stood there, and then just literally goes, "Caw!" All this light just shines from his arse, and she sees these rotating faces on this guy who we've not seen the whole episode. I'm like, who is this guy? Is this the face of God? Would it be more facial hair or something? But then he disappears. And it cuts to commercials while Mulder's on the phone going, Scully! Mulder, total dick in this episode. Just the biggest of dicks, because it's religion related, and as we talked about before, once religion's involved, Mulder will be the biggest arsehole ever. Scully, don't be silly. No. This is just religious nut jobs. Oh, they're just making up stuff. You're like, dude, people are dying. Be a bit more sensitive. I mean, he's not in the whole episode. To be honest, I don't feel like there's much point in him being here. This could have easily been another very Emily, very Christmas Carol-esque episode where Scully did all the investigating on her own. There's no reason for Mulder to be here other than to have that conflict. And it just feels like, people say that Mulder and Scully are at odds in season 6, but here he's just being a knob. And I just, yeah, it's frustrating, like, because they have to, when Scully believes, it's always the way that when one of them believes, the other one has to be skeptic, and it just gets tiring, to be honest. And I just feel like Mulder takes it to the next level of skepticism in a nasty way. But yeah, I do like the moment where Scully actually opens up and tells him that she saw Emily. And he takes a moment, he looks around and then wraps an arm around her to get close. But then he's like, I think you should step away. And you're like, okay. It just fascinates me that Mulder, who has always been shown to be very protective of younger girls that are in trouble and stuff, that he's just being so dismissive and wanting Scully to step away from this case and ignoring the facts. Well, not the facts, obviously. It's very... there aren't facts involved, but you know what I mean. I don't know. I think this story and ideas were done a lot better in Revelations. 2 seasons previous. And I don't know. I just get bored with this one. I just find it very. And I think the problem is obviously I binge watch these, and to have 3 episodes in a row that are very. Oh my God, will they end already? Did not help. When you're watching it on its own, it's not that bad. But it just feels a bit. So, I am again gonna have to put this one in C. Yeah, I think that's the best option there, because meh. There's not much to say about it, and yet somehow I've managed to waffle on about it for like 50 hours. But thankfully, our chain of mediocrity is finally coming into an end with the John Scheiben penned the Pine Bluff variant, which is... I watched Scheiben's commentary for this episode, and he was saying it was very inspired by the 1965 movie The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, and said that he was surprised that this show that has covered so many different genres and always been able to adapt to different genres had really not done more thrillers and that kind of espionage. And I think it's true, because for a show that really goes in on that kind of, the government are experimenting on the people that it's supposed to be protecting, for that kind of series to really not go more with this double-crossing, double agent, Mulder being used to work for the government that is trying out this toxin and stuff like that, and using this rebel group to try that out and stuff like that. I am surprised that there weren't more of these kind of episodes. This is easily one of Scheiben's best solo outings. I stand by the fact I think he did better work when he was working with Spotnitz and Gilligan. I was going to say Gilnitz then, sorry. Yeah, I genuinely enjoy this episode. I just love watching what really was touched upon in Wet Wired is Scully's fear that Mulder might turn out to be distrustful, that she's been being played this whole time when she's invested so much into this partnership and so much time into Mulder himself and his cause, that then she's given this tiny, seed of doubt that he might be working with this Jacob Haley, who might be a terrorist, using this chemical agent to kill people. That she sees that they had this task force at the beginning, trying to capture Haley. But then she witnesses Mulder let the guy go, and she's like, why? What the? And she can't comprehend it. So then you see her paranoia as she's following Mulder around as he goes to this motel and stuff like that. And she's trying to piece it together. Meanwhile, Mulder, who's trying to, he's contacting Haley, and Haley's like, you set us up, and Mulder's like, I didn't. What are you talking about? My partner is suspicious of me. I've put a lot on the line and stuff like that. And he's trying to convince them, but it turns out he is. We find out later that because while Scully is chasing Mulder, she gets run off the road by these agents, who then turn out to be sent by Skinner and this task force leader, who I don't remember the name of, but he's played by the same actor who played the head, like the chief guy at Wolfram and Hart in Angel. Back in the early days. They tell her, they're like, no, it's okay. We know you're suspicious of Mulder, but it's okay. He's working with us. And she's like, what? And they're like, oh, Mulder did ask us if it was okay to tell you, and we told him to not to. So the idea that Mulder hates lying to Scully, the idea that Scully fears more than anything that Mulder may betray her at some point, is really intriguing. And there is so much good espionage with then following, the distrust in Haley's group, and then they're answering to this August Bremer guy, who then turns out to actually be working for the government. And you have this fun later, this bank, that you have this scene at this cinema, this movie theater, where this audience get absolutely annihilated, and the gross reveal of their skeletal remains in these seats when these teenagers turn around. It's really well done and really well lit, using the kind of projector screen. It's amazing cinematography here. I just think it's really well done and really well acted. And then you have this fun bank robbery that Mulder gets roped into. Scully's trying to help him before anything happens and stuff like that. But then you have the tense moment of Mulder on his knees at the end, and you think he's going to get killed for being a double agent and stuff like that. It's so tense. There is so much good tension here, and good storytelling. I really recommend it, and I'm sad they didn't do more of these kind of noir-esque episodes. It is funny that poor John Scheiben in his commentary clearly did not know what to talk about for 43 minutes. And I say 43 minutes because he lets you know that it is difficult to do film length stories in a 43 minute time frame about 4 times. He's like, network television only lets you have 43 minutes, so we have to get a story down. It's like, I know, you've said that already. And it's like he's struggling for things to say, and you could really feel him. So I feel bad for him on his commentary. I think this is a genuinely enjoyable episode. I know back when it aired, it had this really weird, and I've not noticed it on the Blu-rays or that. It had this really weird kind of that blur effect to the filming, like kind of old 80s VHS style film style. And I don't know if that's just the way it appeared on the BBC when I watched it first or what, but that's the version that always stuck with me. And I was like, why does this look like crap? But now you watch it with proper, on DVDs or Blu-rays, and you're like, oh, actually, I think I just have memories of it looking a certain way. So then when I rewatch it, I'm like, doesn't look like that. Why do I remember it this way, kind of thing. I just think it's a fun episode, with a lot of intrigue. Like I say, kind of along the lines of what happens in the Patient X story. I just love the guessing game that's going on, and you're questioning Mulder yourself. Do I think it's S or A? I think it's very much along the lines of Kill Switch, in that I really enjoy it, but I don't think it's perfect, and yet somehow I would still give it an S rank. So I'm gonna put it there. Yeah, because I do enjoy it that much. And it's not, again, it's kind of like Kill Switch. If you ask me, to name an episode to watch, it's never gonna be the first one that I will name. Like at all. I think it'd be 30, top 40 maybe. But it's not bad at all. I just don't think it's an underrated one that I'm guilty myself of not thinking much about. Whereas Folie, Deux, brought to us by Vince Gilligan, another excellent Vince Gilligan script, is definitely one I think more of, but I think it's it's pretty much on the same level as Pine Bluff variant. This idea that, this telemarketer might have been driven slightly mad by this paranoia that his boss is this bug thing that is making his colleagues into undead kind of zombies. And as somebody whose mum was a telemarketer, and I got to see some of her scripts, and you would read like the scripts that they would have to read, and the idea that they would have to read that over and over and over and over again, and the things they would have to come up with if the people replied a certain way. Yeah, I could see that driving me mad slowly. So then, of course, Mulder, who has been, like I say, it wasn't really well developed, the whole Mulder as a skeptic thing, but then to have Mulder, who does easily believe things, to be then brought into Gary Lambert, who takes his colleagues hostage, holds holds them at gunpoint when he's convinced his boss is converting his work friends. Mulder somehow gets embroiled in it by accident while investigating. And continuity, Mulder actually still has a broken finger. There was that amazing scene in the Pine Bluff variant where he got interrogated by Haley, when Haley's, thinks he's being duped and stuff like that. And Mulder gets his finger broken, and he still has his finger splintered here. So I know Scheiben and Gilligan worked together a lot, so that's probably how Gilligan knew to continue that plot point, to have Mulder's finger still splintered. But I think it gives a continuity that the show rarely had, and I just think it's genius. And it's so nice to see some connective tissue there, like I said, because it was so rare. But the thing is Mulder, like, Skinner calls them in, and then Mulder's like, oh, don't worry, I'll go. And Scully's like, I'm hearing a lot of me, but I heard we. And he's like, yeah, there's no point you going. And then he gets captured, and he gets Mr. I'm skeptical, but maybe not anymore, gets roped into Lambert's delusion, and then shares it. And then, of course, Mulder and Scully, who have this connection, Scully eventually gets roped into this delusion as well, seeing the zombies as they are. Or not, depending. I mean, we have a very Sanguinarium-esque ending, where it turns out that that somebody else is suffering this delusion at the end at another office where Pincus might be working. So it might be a delusion and it might not. But apparently the bug suit that was supposed to be Pincus's real form. Apparently it looked like absolute shite on set. So it used to get taken the piss out of. So then the only way to fix it, and let's be honest, it doesn't look great with the visual effects added. But apparently then they had to add a load of visual effects just to make it look bearable. It still looks silly though. It really does. So, but the idea that, you know, Mulder gets taken into the psychiatric ward after following Pincus everywhere and stuff, and going off his nut where he's just like, hey, he's a bug, and of course Pincus is behind Skinner, and Mulder's seeing the bug, and he's like, no, and he's trying to protect Skinner and that, and Skinner just like absolutely pins him down. And then Mulder ends up in a psychiatric ward, and Scully comes in. And you know what? Stuff like this is why I'm convinced Vince Gilligan had nothing to do with Kitsunagari. Is this scene at the hospital where Scully takes his hand and Mulder's like, you had to have seen this coming after 5 years together. It's just like, oh. And then he's like, you've got to believe me. And Scully's like, it's not that simple. And Mulder's like, you're the only one who ever has or will. You're my 1 in 5 billion. And I'm just sat there going, oh. It's so beautiful. It's so well done. It's so well acted. And it makes so much sense that, Mulder has been spouting these crazy theories and stuff for so long. And Scully has just weathered it all and taken it in stride and taken some of it on. And then we've seen her when she's been solo, using some of those theories to fuel her own theories, out there theories that she's needed to complete investigations. That then they can have this moment where it's just like, look, you're the only one who can help me here. And she does. She saves him at the end because she shares the delusion. So it's just really well written, really good acting. I wouldn't say it's one of my favourite at all. I do feel it's very much on the same, like I say, I feel like it's on the same level as Pine Bluff Variant. It is highly enjoyable. It suffers a little bit at pacing, like after Lambert is killed, and you see Mulder slowly like trying to piece things together about what happened and stuff. It plods a little bit, but otherwise this is a fun episode. See, I'm kind of tempted to put Pine Bluff down in A. Because I think I would probably have to put Folie Deux there. There are some beautiful moments here. But it does feel a lot like, you know what, it's very reminiscent of Mulder tailing tombs in that episode. Where he's just like, no, I know you're guilty, and then ended up on the wrong end of the stick. A or S? That's a tough one. Genuinely.
One eternity later.
You know what? I'm going to put it in A. Because I think it's kind of very... It's on the enjoyability of Detour. I like it. I really like it. But I don't know what it is. There's just something not completely fulfilling to the greatest degree. I don't know if that makes sense. I can't explain it. But yeah. I have to... Sorry. And then we have the season finale. The end. The cleverly titled episode. I laugh. But actually, this is, like, really the capstone. And the end of an era. I can't even begin to express how much was lost when they stopped filming in Vancouver. Not only did you have, like a 200, is it 200 or 400 member crew that had worked on the series and molded this show over 5 years. Tom Braidwood, better known as Melvin Frohickey, he had been an assistant director on the series. He was no longer able to act in that crew member status due to, laws regarding working in another country and stuff like that. We lose Rob Bowman. We lose Bob Goodwin as a director. We eventually lose so many of the Canadian actors. Thankfully, we got to keep the Lone Gunman, but otherwise, there were so many of the side characters that get pushed aside due to them not being able to film and stuff like that. Just and it's been said essentially, Vancouver was its own character. That atmosphere that it had, all of that was lost, and I get why they had to do it to make sure they kept David Duchovny in the series. But yeah, it makes me sad. This episode makes me sad to think of everything that it does kind of bring to a close. And the fact that it's maybe not the strongest season finale doesn't help, because it can't do too much, because it's got to lead into the movie. So it can't change too much. The only reason why it's really here is to set up not only burning down the X-Files unit at the end, so that then they're closed, to start the movie. But we're also here to introduce Gibson Praise, who is supposed to be this chess prodigy, but actually turns out that he can just read the other players' minds. And he becomes more important in like next season. But also to introduce Diana Folie, or Fowie, as I like to joke that Byers pronounces it.
Folie.
I'm sure it's just an accent thing and I'm just hearing it that way. But yeah, I constantly want to call her Fowie. The foul one, played by Mimi Rogers. Apparently it was recommended by David Duchovny that she get the role for this character, having previously worked with her on another project. I think it was a naughty, filthy time project, but I could be wrong. I don't remember, and I don't pay much attention. I'm not a big fan of Mimi Rogers. I think age and seeing her in more stuff have kind of made me a bit more tolerant of her, but I just remember when she turned up in Dawson's Creek, and I was like, I don't care, I don't want to know, it's Folie. That's all I could see her as. But as I said in my character list, she does what she's here to do. She's here to cause friction in the partnership. Bearing in mind, Mulder and Scully have gotten really close at this point. We have had quite a bit of tension recently. But certainly post Redux, Scully has really been trying to connect with Mulder. And it makes me so sad that she's kind of treated like shit here. And it does not help that Gibson is a teasing little shit. He constantly is like, you don't care, except for what she thinks. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure Scully cares about what Mulder thinks. But yeah, he totally is a little shit stirrer. He's constantly taunting, like, he's thinking about one of the girls here, and one of them's thinking about you, but he doesn't want me to say. I don't know how this little 12-year-old git can be so... And he doesn't... This isn't the first time. When he comes back in season 8, he's so taunting Scully when he's like, you're so close to Mulder. Oh, you're so... It's just like, just tell her. You clearly know. Just tell her. And the fact that he can read minds... like to joke that he's essentially Chris Carter in the TV series. Not even kidding. It's like, look at this information, but I'm going to withhold it from you. I love Jeff Golka as Gibson, but my God, when you think about how Gibson is at times, and the cocky little way he talks, like, you have this scene. This episode starts as well, bringing back CSM into the fold, because somehow the Syndicate have tracked him down, and Krychek is now Well-Manicured Man's lackey, even though he doesn't turn up in the movie. He just disappears again after this episode. He's not the driver for Well-Manicured Man in the movie, which sucks. I don't know why that was a thing. But yeah, apparently now he's back in the fold, and he's sent to collect Smoking Man. So then it turns out that they brought him back to essentially be their hitman, to do the things that they don't have the stomach for. And you're like, is that really all Smoking Man brings to the Syndicate? That's a bit lame. Especially because most of the time he's doing what they do, is just ordering other people to do the things. So that feels a little off. Obviously they had to do it because he's in the movie. So again, that is something they had to set up. But yet somehow this episode, it's a culmination of everything, while also trying to set up, you just know that Smoking Man had to be the reason why weaselly, whiny Jeffrey Spender is heading up this task force to investigate Gibson Praise and what happened to this Russian chess player who was assassinated. And to set up, like, Spender's part in the FBI, and then have Folie. So it's setting up a lot of stuff. So it feels quite disjointed. Sorry, like I say, this sore throat is really... I've been recording a lot today. It feels quite disjointed from everything else. It's so weird, and as a result, it kind of plods. I can't explain it. I feel like there's so much setup here that is not then paid off in the movie, that you have to wait until the season 6 opener to really follow up on. I don't know. They tried to do this whole goodbye Vancouver. The fact that they start out with this chess tournament, and apparently they put an advert out in the local Vancouver newspaper to invite people to come along for the filming. And they were expecting to have to fill seats, but then they had to turn away a load of people, literally thousands of people, because they had to fill this 30,000 capacity ice hockey stadium. And they had more than enough people to fill the seats. And apparently everybody was really well behaved and stuff, and got back on their spots and stuff like that really quickly, and reacted on time and stuff. So it's so nice that the fans got to... We wouldn't see that again until, like, Fight Club in season 7. But to be able to involve the fans, and unfortunately, you know, it's just any random person that's hoping to be on TV that probably went along. But the fact that the fans got to join in that regard is pretty cool, and especially their goodbye to Vancouver. But yeah, I don't feel it's particularly strong as a season finale. Bob Goodwin, in his final role as director on the series, does a good job. But I don't know, I feel this episode is too focused on making Scully jealous and showing her being jealous, and and showing her, like, Mulder again kind of hiding facts about, because Folie has never ever come up before. You have episodes like Patient X where Mulder constantly refers to the fact that he has been, trying to search for the truth and believing in aliens for 5 years. He only seems to, this is something that frustrates me on this series. They constantly do it. That Mulder refers to his time on the X-Files as just the time that he's been working with Scully, when in actuality he opened the X-Files before she came along. What was it, 1991 or whatever? So, yeah, it's kind of frustrating when they do that. I get because they're referring to, that time. But even then, that's kind of wrong, because Mulder and Scully's first episode in the pilot, is 1992. So they're always a year out with that fact as well. The fact that we've never heard of Folie before, and then she is made out to be this massive part. Some people theorize that she's the ex-wife. I kind of get why, but that again is never confirmed. It's never confirmed. We never really get the feeling. I don't know if Smoking Man is the reason why she got transferred to Berlin. Maybe because she got too close to Mulder. But again, Gibson never gives any indication that she might be working against them. Now, I don't know if she was purposely kept in the dark, because she genuinely seems interested and confused. Now, either, Folie is a good actor, but certainly compared to her later appearances, she seems a lot more out of the loop. But again, that's never expanded upon. It's just, she's here, and now she's going to be the femme fatale, and she's going to make Mulder all gooey, even though it frustrates me, and we'll get more into this in season 6. The fact that Mulder and Scully have come so far, and yet then just Folie throws herself at him, and he just willingly goes along, and you're like, really, Mulder? Just really? It's frustrating, and I get what Carter is doing, but it feels like he's trying to be too clever for his own good. As a result, I love the elements that's set up here, but I don't feel it necessarily works as a setup, but also for something that comes directly before the movie. I don't know. I enjoy this one, but I don't think it's great. So I think I'm going to have to put it in B. It's enjoyable, but I feel like it's more set up than anything else. And yeah, I just find Gibson annoying. And yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one to talk about. I don't know. I don't feel like it's not bad, but it's not great. It's competent, and it's watchable. And it does get you in emotional feels to watch how Scully, who has come so far in this series, who this season has really been taking a lot of emotional blows, to then feel like she's losing Mulder at the point where they have gotten so close. And, they will get even closer in Fight the Future. But again, then, season 6, and I say this, so I say this as, as the person who regards season 6 as their all-time favourite season. And I say that in all genuineness. Me and good friend Mulu and then Bestie Jane went to Comic-Con. And the last day when Jane was there, we bumped into some X-Files cosplayers. And bless them though, they had watched season 5 and the movie. And that was it. And I couldn't help but joke. I was like, it's all downhill from here. And I felt so bad seeing them as these, again, non-cynical, enjoying the height of the series and stuff. And you want to be able to go, there's so much to look forward to. And there is. Do not get me wrong. And again, I say this as absolute fan of season 6 and episode, Monster of the Week episodes continuing on. But I just, like I say, so much is lost, and because of how much kind of gets retconned in Fight the Future, and then the mythology from season 6 onwards, it just makes me sad, like I say, how much is lost, and how much this particular episode just doesn't really try to change anything, because it can't. It doesn't have much lead in to anything else. So yeah, I gotta put it middle of the road. I just struggle with it, and don't have much to say about it. Which is frustrating, because, you have this traumatic imagery of, the X-Files division burning down. The idea that they're burning this office down that has been so iconic for so long. And it just never felt the same again. But yeah, anyway, that was the end. And normally this would be where I would finish, but we had to do another, like season 3, we have to magically tack on Fight the Future, the movie. I was debating where to put this, whether to put this on season 6 or do its own thing. But I think really it belongs here, considering, it was filmed before this season was filmed. And obviously it is so connected to, the Black Oil storyline, while also doing its own thing. Because... Okay, I need a drink quickly. One sec. So do you remember when the whole thing with the black oil was that it came to Earth on a rock, and hit in Tunguska? It was a meteorite kind of thing from Mars. Oh, those were the days. Back when, the black oil slivered and controlled you and stuff like that, except for Marita, apparently, in the red and the black. But yeah, it was just, and there was no vaccine, even though they thought they had a vaccine in Patient X and the red and the black. No, that's all pointless now. Apparently, really, the black oil came to Earth on a meteorite back in prehistoric times. And Neanderthals find it, and apparently it's been frozen there, because it doesn't like the cold. And at some point, this particular... So all I can assume is that this is different specimens of the black oil. Apparently now, and this is the thing that overwrites everything else. Apparently now... The insidious oil now creates, births alien, incubates in your body, and then births an alien that bursts out of your chest. And the Syndicate make out like this is an absolutely shocking thing to happen. That the idea that the black oil has mutated. Except then later on, we see this spaceship where there are literally thousands of pods with infected people with these aliens growing inside them. So at some point they had this as a production line. They must have known. So unless Smoking Man is keeping this as some kind of secret lair, Okay, so Editor Me has to cut in here to do an 11th hour insert because I'm so unhappy with how tired and exhausted I was by the end of this video. I'll return you to your regularly scheduled rambling in time for the final thoughts and tearing, but I have to give a much more cohesive breakdown than I did here. Because we're starting out with the X-Files closed. Mulder and Scully have been reassigned. They're still working together because the higher-ups are idiots, apparently. And they're sent to... there's a bomb threat that they're sent to find before it goes off. And I think it's fascinating that Scully follows... Mulder goes to a completely different building from where they've been told to go. And I think it's really interesting that Scully follows Mulder because, you know, everything in her is, you know, people cite the scene in Requiem where she's like, let's go spend some money in season 7. It's like, that's like the completion of her journey. But actually here, she should be following protocol. She trusts Mulder's hunches and she follows him to this other building. You know, they managed to find the bomb. Unfortunately, Terry O'Quinn's Agent Michaud is working for them and make sure that the bomb blows up. But it's frustrating to watch. Poor Mulder and Scully, who saved lives, they still have to go for the protocol. You know, they broke protocol, so they have to go through OPR meetings. But it is fun to watch this whole board of superiors look to Skinner, who's there on the end of the table after hearing Mulder's explanations and stuff. And it's something we've seen a lot more of Skinner in this season specifically. But we really don't get to watch much of the inner workings of, say, his, you know, assistant directorship and stuff like that. So to see him on a board of assistant directors judging everything, you know, his agents, what they're like, it's kind of fun to see that. And it's sad we didn't get to explore it more. But there's a lot of amazing action pieces in this movie. It can be a bit too formulaic. You know, you have your starting, you know, the bomb scene and stuff that clearly takes a lot from the Oklahoma bombing. You know, just the this office block that's just completely destroyed. And not bad CGI or that. I mean, there's a lot of practical effects involved as well, but there's a lot of these shots, these massive shots, like green screen shots, of, you know, from behind the character, be it this, when they're looking at the destruction that has been wrought, Mulder looking at the domes at the ice, I was going to say ice palace then, the ice base, or looking out at the cornfield. There's a lot of those kind of shots, and it does, although the green screening is pretty well utilized, it can feel like it's going, look at this expanse, look at this amazing thing, but actually you're like, yeah, but it kind of feels that that's the thing. It's the back of our character looking at this green screen, and it can feel a bit. But it's interesting to watch Mulder. So they get separated. That, you know, they're suspended and that because they broke protocol. And it's fun to watch. We've seen it before in the show with, you know, the X-Files being closed and them being, especially at the end of season 1, and them being separated. This doesn't feel, because the problem is with this movie is obviously it's got to introduce new people. And unfortunately, I think that's a lot of the problem of this movie is because it's having to do so much exposition work to introduce, because it's, it's a movie, it's a theatrical release. This is not a straight to DVD movie. And that's kind of my problem with Chris Carter's. We'll talk more about it, as I said before, when I talk about I Want to Believe. But this is one of my biggest issues with the idea of continuing a series with such a, this myth arc, conspiratorial bedrock, is if you're going to make more movies, you can't keep going, oh, look, let's catch people up on what's happened in... At some point, you've just got to go, look, if you didn't watch the movie before, deal with it. But obviously, this was the first movie, and it has a lot of heavy lifting, exposition dumps that in classic Chris Carter style are clunky. Like, very clunky. And, the scene of Mulder drunk at the bar going, I'm, the one who's spooky Mulder and whose sister was taken and stuff like that. And it does what it has to do, and it's entertaining. As a fan, it's entertaining. I don't know what it's like for non-fans. But yeah, it's not always the best writing. But it's fun to watch Mulder and Scully fighting for, answers to what's going on and stuff like that, as they realize, as Kurtzweil is introduced, brilliantly played by Martin Landau. He is excellent here. I'm kind of sad that this was his first introduction into the franchise, and he doesn't make it past past this. Much like Strughold, I did mention that he had been mentioned before. Strughold Mining had been mentioned in the show. Was it season 3? I don't remember. I recorded the season 3 tiering list so long ago. And he's excellently portrayed by Armin Mueller-Stahl here. But again, he is so important to this story. And, the movie ends with this cliffhanger where, we see this expanse, is it in Tunisia or something? This cornfield, where the bees are pollinated, much like we saw in Zero Sum. Not Zero Sum. I mean, kind of Zero Sum, but Herrenvolk, mainly. Like I say, the bees that are used here, and I mentioned it when I talked about season 4. And bear in mind, bees haven't been involved in this season at all. Now, obviously, this movie was filmed between seasons 4 and 5, so they had more connection with season 4. But it's kind of sad that they didn't seed it in a little bit here in the lead up to the movie. But we have this end scene with Strughold and this, cornfield and that. Never mentioned again. Bees, never mentioned again. So much has led up to here. And as I said, I think that's the thing with this season. So much is building up. And you're like, right, we're finally getting somewhere. And you're like, this is how to introduce the myth arc to people who have absolutely no clue. And then you get season 6, which just whatever. Season 6, again, we'll get to that. But what is here connects to, say, the beginning, the season 6 premiere, and then that's it. That's it. But yeah, the action scenes are very formulaic. You have your big opener. Sorry, I was, as usual. Even now, I'm re-recording this to cover up for my rambling. And I'm still getting off track. You have this chase scene in the middle, and then you have your end climactic scene. So it's brilliantly directed, and there's so much use of practical effects here. To the point of, the ice scenes are filmed in a refrigerated studio where people started catching colds because they would, or bugs, because they would go into the studio to film. and be in these freezing temperatures, and then they would step out into the LA heat. So their bodies were just like going back and forth, and they would fall ill. So the fact that this was completed in what, 10 weeks is pretty impressive. But there's amazing set pieces, like I say, brilliant direction by Rob Bowman. And I have so many memories of this movie. Bear in mind, sorry, not the mic. Bear in mind, this movie is 25 years old this year. I mean, it's bad enough this whole show is 30 years old this year. Is it August or September? I think it's September. Which is annoying because Watch Mojo, you know, that bastion of YouTube entertainment, recently did a poll about pop culture anniversaries in September. And they were like, oh, season whatever of Friends or whatever. And I was like, hello? X-Files is 30 years old. And yeah, they didn't mention it at all. Not salty at all. I didn't do this insert just to bring up that frustration. But no, and I went to see this movie. This is how this is stuck in my head. Other than seeing this movie so many times to the point that I didn't actually rewatch this when I watched season 5. I know this movie so much in and out. I mean, I know the whole show in and out, but I rewatch the episodes to make these lists so that stuff is fresh in my mind. I have new, you know, I'm more critical of it and stuff like that. Whereas this movie, I skimmed through it when I was making the insert picture clips. But it's so embedded in my head. There is so much great Mulder and Scully character work here. And just driving on, and perfect score by Mark Snow. As always, I mean, why would you question it? But it's got that great big theatrical orchestral sound, which is great. But, which is just great. That's just how I say it. Trust me, in what I'm overdubbing, I got to the point, I was so tired, I started to go talking about something and then go, and stuff like that. So trust me, I'm giving you way more insight here. So the day of release, I went to the cinema. I was studying my A-levels, and I actually walked from my school. It was a good half hour, 40-minute walk. I walked all the way from my school because the last 2 periods of the day I had free. So after for lunch, I walked to the cinema. I went to see this on opening day, and I don't remember there being many people. That I don't remember because I don't really pay much attention to that kind of thing. But anyway, I'd seen Jonathan Ross's like Film 98 or whatever, and I'd seen him talk about the hallway scene. So I knew that Mulder and Scully, you know, that famous hallway scene, which people that haven't watched this movie are going to be completely confused about. But basically, Mulder and Scully get separated. Scully gets reassigned to like Salt Lake City, and she goes to tell Mulder, and then is like, I'm out. This job just does not hold for me what it once did after all that I've experienced. And you're like, just think about that. Just think about, Scully came to this job, you know, for you know, from a medical, against her parents' wishes, especially her father. And you know, I've seen fanfics go, oh, it's because of what happened with Daniel and stuff like that. As an ex, you don't need to know. But you know, considering how she, you know, she was so, remember Scully of season 1? So green, so by the book. And then you get to this point where she's like, I've seen too much. I've seen too much. If I'm not working with Mulder, if I'm not doing this job, you know, in this division, it's just not worth it. And I certainly don't want to be moved to Salt Lake City. So to see her go to Mulder, she's like, I was debating coming to you, and he chases her to give her this just beautiful, amazing powerhouse acting by Duchovny and Anderson. You know, Mulder just saying, you know, you kept me honest. I can't do this on my own. I need you. I need you to keep fighting for us, for this, and you're just like, and it's so tense, and there's this beautiful orchestral, like just slight, slow version of the theme underneath as it's building, as Mulder and Scully are about to kiss, and then the bee. We will get back to what I was saying about going to the cinema. The bee that apparently, conveniently, so you have this big chase scene through this cornfield, where Mulder and Scully find these bees that are being used for transporting the virus. Like I say, this is all tied back to stuff that's happened before, and yet at the same time it's very much its own thing. They get chased by them at night. I don't even remember where it is that they get chased. Texas or something? I could be wrong. Really should have probably watched this before doing this. And they get chased back, and then they go to this OPR meeting. The bee. We see the bee crawling around Scully's neck. But no. It's clearly Chris Carter. There's an ongoing joke about Chris Carter's face on a bee and stuff like that. It waits until Mulder and Scully are together, until Scully is like leaving and they're about to kiss, before it stings her, and it turns out it's got the virus in it, which is then gonna kill her. And you're just like, what? And I knew they weren't gonna kiss. There was no way on this planet they were gonna be allowed to kiss, especially knowing that there was gonna be a season 6. My God, at that time, in that cinema, that scene is so palpable. I was on the edge of my seat at the cinema. I nearly fell off when they didn't kiss. And I knew they weren't going to kiss. But you're so drawn in. And I don't know what it's like for everybody. And I guess like the no romos and stuff like that. Like, but it's... And it's that kind of thing that is why I love Mulder and Scully. And so much of my love of the show revolves around Mulder and Scully's relationship. It's like just partnership. Their partnership, friendship, relationship, whatever you want to call it. It's just so strong, and it's so those memories of 25 years ago, when I was a child. I mean, not a child. I was obviously old enough to be doing my A-levels. Adulthood. It's the start of adulthood. My God, I'm so old. You know, just so much about this. And there's so much good banter between Mulder and Scully. And I think just watching... watching the I was going to go back to something. What was I going to go back to? Anyway, don't worry. Watching the conspiracy, the syndicate. I love watching, John Neville works his arse off here as well-manicured man. And I think it's interesting to consider what has transpired since the Red and the Black, since the rebel alien was rescued, and after that back and forth between him and First Elder, and then not agreeing with what should happen, it's interesting to watch them kind of. He's on the outskirts, and of course then he's helping and stuff, but as a result, of course, he can't live. So it's a shame that we lose Kurzweil, who doesn't survive past this movie. Strughold just disappears. We get introduced to Braunschweig, who is studying these the how the alien is incubating in chests and stuff, like in bodies. And at one point we get introduced to this random person who is not one of the firefighters or that from the beginning. Because there's these firefighters get called in to save this kid who falls into a hole, who then gets infected by the black oil. That's how this all starts after we're introduced to the whole Neanderthal thing. But, and I think I said this, Gary Grubbs is like the fire chief. And he's running around, he's trying to find out what's happened to his men. And he's just going around going, what about my man? What about my man? So whenever I see him in something now, and I wish I have not met him at a convention, I keep hoping that he turns up randomly. I just want him to sign, what about my man? That's one of the things I take away from this movie. Weird things. Braunschweig, played by Jeffrey DeMunn. I met Jeffrey DeMunn at a convention, and I mentioned that this was one of the first things I ever saw him in. And he said that he'd met Chris Carter at a party more recently. This was several years back. He said he enjoyed the experience of working with Carter and that he would work with him again. And I thought it was interesting. But he doesn't survive at all. He gets ripped to shreds in quite a graphic way that only befits, I'm pretty sure this is a 15 rated movie. What was that, PG-13 R rating in America? I don't remember. But yeah, there's a lot of people just do not make it past this movie. We're introduced to them because, of course, then they have to have that star power, which is frustrating in a way. I get it. It's for a movie. You have to have the stars. But for the longest time, I know Whoopi Goldberg was trying to get on this show. And they kept turning around and said, no. We like to go for a more realistic thing. If we put too big a star in the series, then it takes away from the realism of it and stuff like that. And it's sad that then come season, once they move to LA, they're like, oh, no, you can be as big as you want. I'll get Bruce Campbell. I know Tia Leone and Gary Shandling are like nudge, nods. But still... But Jeffrey Lewis and stuff like that, you're like, oh, okay, you can be as big as you want. Just come in our show now. And it's like, okay, I would have loved to have seen what I would have done with Whoopi Goldberg if she'd been on a series. But yeah, we have these these perfectly cast classic actors who don't make it past because, of course, I guess can't contracts and stuff like that. But it's sad that we get introduced to all these characters that never make it past this feature, and especially because they're supposed to be so integral to the bigger picture. The Lone Gunmen are here for fan service, so if you were looking forward to seeing them, they have one scene. Which is frustrating because it would have been fun to see them actually. I know Mulder gets information from Well Manicured Man about where Scully is. But it would have been fun to see the Lone Gunmen do more to help track down these coordinates and get Mulder, flights and stuff like that. I know, nothing much. It's just the scene that they have is like the most fan servicey of scenes. And you're like, oh, okay. But Skinner turns up again, so that's good. It's weird because there's been a lot of articles recently that have been like, 25th anniversary, the movie that could have worked. And I'm like, I think it did. It has so many issues. And as I said when I was talking about the end and stuff like that, unfortunately, my frustrations come, I think, from so much that gets changed from season 6. But that's not this movie's fault. It tries here to tie stuff in from the series. It tries to introduce the series and the myth arc to new non-fans, to a completely oblivious audience. Which is it's quite uneven. You're not really going to get actual answers from here. Because I think, they went too much down that alien feeling, the chest burster style alien. They didn't give it its own identity when it already had its own identity. The slivering, insidious oil is now, no, it infects you. And then, it's like, okay. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to cover in this block. I don't remember what I say next. So before I say too much and probably end up repeating myself, I'm going to go back to this mumbling idiot. But yeah, I think this is a great, competent movie, highly enjoyable. I have watched this movie so many times. I really enjoy it. Do I think it's perfect? No. No. I think it's highly underrated. Definitely. And I do genuinely think it's accessible. To both fans and non-fans. It just gets up its own butt a little bit at times. Every part of me wants to put this in S rank. I will not lie. I think I might have to put it in A. I don't know, this is a tough one. I genuinely enjoy this. I've watched it so many times. I can quote it. But I just think Mark Snow's score is amazing. There's a lot of great set pieces. Oh, I kind of feel like I'm talking myself into an S rank here. I think I'm gonna go A. No, screw it. S. I'm gonna say S. I just enjoy it that much. It has issues, like a lot script-wise, but I think it's very Carter-esque in its storytelling, like dialogue-wise. But otherwise, it is gripping. It's a good thriller. Yeah, I just enjoy it, and it's sad that they weren't able to keep that momentum up, really. Especially then, in I Want to Believe. But we'll get to that when we get to that one. But yeah, yeah, that's season 5. I know I've waffled on excessively, especially as I've got more tired, so I apologise for that. But I don't know, this season just generally feels all over the place. It's a shorter season, which you wouldn't have guessed by how long these videos have taken. But it's a shorter season, and yet it feels very... Whereas, say, the early years really seemed to be struggling to keep the pace up in the later episodes, they were still far more enjoyable. This one had like a good chunk of episodes in the, near the end that just really plodded, and I feel like the focus maybe was elsewhere while they're trying to do the move, while they're trying to, work on the movie and finish that up and stuff like that, and then trying to set the pieces in motion for where the story is going to go from here. And as a result, I feel like some stuff just falls by the wayside. There are great episodes here. This is an enjoyable season, but it just, at times, just plods. And that's just and I feel bad, but that's what knocks this season down for me, and why I've really struggled to get motivated to talk about it. And you know what? I discovered this while making the thumbnails for both these parts. Because it's taken so long to make this particular video. So much so that my hair has been dyed and that's grown out in the meantime. It's been over 4 months. That I was able to make the thumbnails while I was trying to get geared up to make this half. And I was just like, I think my biggest issue with this season is there's nothing really memorable, like Monster of the Week wise. you know, in previous seasons, we have always had something that has been iconic to put on the thumbnails. Be that Pusher, Tombs, Fluke Man, Donny Faster, the the Peacock Brothers, you know, Smoking Man. We've had the Cancer Arc, you know, this, that, and the other. But so much of that is just gone this season. And yes, you have important things that happen on an emotional scale, especially for Scully, but they're not very necessarily standoutish. And I think that's this season is just, yeah, it's fine. It's competent. It's enjoyable to watch the episodes individually. The Myth Arc episodes are amazing to watch as the two-parters kind of thing. But as a whole, as a binge-watching experience, not the greatest. Just, you start to lose momentum quite quickly, especially at the halfway point. Even though you then have episodes like Bad Blood and you know, I feel like I've been either a bit mean to Folie Deux or too kind to the Pine Bluff variant. But yeah, just that's my thoughts on season 5. I seriously apologise for how long this has taken to put out. I'm really hoping to get cracking on the next seasons really quickly. I do feel like there was just a lot to talk about and think about and study with this season, and just all the implications of, you know, location change and stuff like that. Anyway, sorry, I've waffled on too long. Please share your thoughts. I really would love to hear your thoughts. I don't doubt that I'm going to get a lot of, wow, you were really unfair to this season. And maybe I was. But I can only tell you how I experienced it. How I've always experienced. I've never thought much of season 5. And then I come back to season 5 and I always go, oh, no, actually, I like this episode. I like this episode. Etc., etc. But I do feel like there's just episodes that are just too many episodes that are just, yeah, whatever. But please share your thoughts. I really look forward to seeing your thoughts, even if you're telling me off for being wrong. I look forward to seeing your reasons why you enjoy certain episodes, and your thoughts generally on season 5 as a whole. Whether you think it was good. I don't think the show could have gone on much longer if it had stayed in Vancouver. The same hospital, the same woods being used over and over again was wearing thin. And I feel like they were trying to move away from that in this season. But at the same time still doing stuff like Detour, where they're like, no, we'll have our last forest journey. Yeah, I don't think it could have continued much longer in Vancouver, but at the same time, I just feel like so much was lost when they left there. So yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts. So please share those comments down below, and I will try to reply. I know I'm not very good at that. Sometimes I just don't know what to say, and I don't want to sound like a complete moron. I mean, I do anyway, but you know what I mean. But yeah, please share your thoughts. Please like and subscribe. Please give any ideas of other videos you would like to see. Yeah, thanks so much for watching. Please take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you somewhere down the line.